fun. So today we're just midsummer, gonna be hot. We're just going fishing. And you know, we're probably not gonna make a cast today on anything over 3 foot deep. This lake, they just live shallow on this river. And one thing that you're gonna see, even though I got several baits laid out, is the color. A lot of the baits are gonna have this color. You know, Yum calls it tinfoil. We have the new disco ball pad crasher. They're all shad colors, like really loud shad colors. And I know over the years, you know, people have not really taken on to that because, I don't know, they just don't, they think it's a gimmick, and I'm telling you, it's not. You know, I've made a lot of money on that tinfoil Christie critter and Christie craw over the years. It's just a bait that I think on days like today where you have no wind, hot, that bait color triggers them to bite. It's just like a shad flaring in their face. And even when they are biting, it's a really good color. I just think it triggers bites sometimes. We're gonna see if we can make that true today. I think I know what's going on now. Like it's flat calm. Just gotta hit them, get it close to them and make them react. You know, whenever you hear about reaction lures, baits and stuff like that, it's doing things, the fish don't want to bite. I mean, it's hot, water temperature's right at 90, 80. You gotta do things, do fish with colors to make them react. Popping that jig, you know, making that frog go faster. Just do things that, like cat-like, make them eat. Thought that was gonna be a big one for a second. No, so this is just a stretch of water willow, and even though it all looks the same, you know, there's patches of it that kind of gets me excited, meaning that, you know, like right here, it's got some open alleys where I can cast through it, but yet it's still got some thick places where these fish can set up, you know, some shady places. There's just a lot of different things to offer, and it's really the same as it would be if it was hydrilla or even bushes. You know, you can get a bite anywhere, but typically, you know, your high percentage places are going to be, you know, these little alleys around the points, you know, your thicker clusters of weeds. You know, if we got wind, you know, the front edge, it's all the same, no matter what you're really fishing. You know, the thing about it is you can get bit anywhere, so you gotta kind of fish it all. But you'll know whenever, you know, I get around something where I feel like I should get a bite, you'll see me make 2 or 3 casts at it. You know, this lake or river, it draws current. There's current running through it all the time. And that's what makes these points and these drains in these weeds good. I mean, current's pulling through them. Even though you probably can't see it, you know, these fish will set up. They're lazy. They don't want to chase nothing. They'll set up where it comes to them. You know, and it's really shallow. I mean, we're setting in 1.8 now, and you know, a lot of these, outside of these weeds, the water's low today's not more than a foot, which I like that because you don't have to, you know, I don't have to fish 5 foot deep. Decide where these fish at. If they're around there, they're gonna bite it. If they see the bait. Just swimming this jig right now. I want to be throwing a frog, but water's just really dirty and it's got a little wind on it, so I don't know that they could find it as good as they can this jig. Like, I like doing a lot of things, but flipping grass, water willow, is for sure one of my favorites. You know, that stuff is not, I mean, 8 inches deep on the outside. What they're doing is they're setting that just those little bitty shade spots. And when you see this bait, like, I don't know if you can see it there, but when it just flashes, almost like a willow leaf blade when it falls, and it just, you know, it makes them, I think it makes them react. You know, once it gets summertime and they're their own shad, like almost predominantly, like it's just hard to beat that color of bait tinfoil in stained water. Now this is pretty dirty, but like as long as it's got some stain, you know, say a foot visibility or less, I mean, they bite it. So much fun. Pitched in there like just a little hole, and you see the grass flare. Getting a little bit bigger. Skinny. This river doesn't have a lot of great big ones. I mean, 4, you know, 5-pounders are really good fish, so, you know, 15 pounds, 17, 18 wins a lot of tournaments, and a lot of times that's one big bite. You know, a lot of guys will catch 4 of them in a 5 or 6 pounder, 4 or 5 pounder. You catch 2 of them, you win. So today I just want to get bites. In these weeds, I can do a lot of different things, you know, with this Christie critter. Kind of the same as a swim jig, you know, I can pitch it in them holes and fish it and then swim it out just by the shad color and how it swims. There's actually times I've caught them really good, better than a swim jig, by swimming it. Just not as bulky, but I still believe that color gets you a few more bites throughout the day just by getting them to react. And I think, you know, I've had 3 bites on it just in the last little bit, and they're really hard bites. I mean, just shake your teeth, and I think that's what it is. They get mad and when it lands around them. You know, today I'm just fishing. You know, I got 3 or 4 rods on the deck. Just fishing the bait that feels the best. You know, the reason I started flipping, you know, this kind of grass or this stretch of grass is because there's just not a lot of alleys and stuff, you know, to throw a swim jig or a frog. There's not a lot of wind, so I don't want to move the weeds a bunch. It's so shallow, that'll spook these fish. So I want to just drop that bait right on their head. You know, we get in some areas where the weeds come a lot further off the bank, and you know, there's alleys, then I'll pick up something moving, you know, and just depending on watercolor and wind, you know, that kind of depicts the bait there. But, you know, this is just, I call them flipping weeds. Some are flipping, some are frogging, and some can be everything, but, you know, there's just not a lot of area to fish it out. And we're getting bit flipping, so this is a half. It's actually you know, I could probably go down a little bit, But it's all about getting them to react. I want it to fall fast. I want it to shine. Just taking this chartreuse pin and just putting a little bit of chartreuse on the tips there. This lake, a lot of the fish that I catch over the years, and it's been consistent, their pinchers will be like a bright orange or even kind of a yellow looking. It's weird. It just kind of breaks it up a little bit. And he gone. Got him about twice anyway. I guess if you fish with your leg crossed, you don't deserve to catch one. If you get in a place like this, you know, and the pads are just a little bit overwhelming, just look for, you know, what's different. That's all I'm doing, you know, and you just got to put the trolling motor down and fish, cover some water. But, you know, you want to look for the points, the drains. I like clear, you know, pretty clear water in pads just because it's hard to fish down below. And they got to be able to see. I mean, I've caught them in dirty water, but if I pull in and there's a lot to choose from, I'm probably going to start, you know, in the clearest water that I can find, just so they can see the bait. But it's really all about, like a lot of other fishing is, you just got to put the trolling motor down and see where you can get a bite. One thing, when I am fishing them, you know, if I'm just going to cover water 10 yards apart on cast, 5 yards, whatever. But when I get a bite, when I finally do get a bite, most generally they're going to be a concentration somewhere. When I do get a bite, I'm really going to sit there and kind of pick it apart just to make sure that there's not a school around. You know, and it's depth too. I mean, once you get a bite, you know, say in 2 foot, you know, another bite in 2 foot, I'm going to start kind of trying to stay around that depth. But until you figure it out, you kind of got to just bounce back and forth. Same way with a lot of other things. The only thing in pads, you know, this thick, you don't have a lot of bait options. I mean, if I were to start flipping all of these pads, it would take me all day to cover just this creek. So I want something that I can cover some water. You know, I may, if I get in an area where I think there's a bunch of them, you know, I may try to flip, or, you know, this right here, you could swim a jig, throw a spinnerbait, but a lot of that stuff is just so thick that you can't do much with it other than throw a topwater, frog. You know, this time of year, midsummer, you know, if I had to pick where to fish, you know, on a river like we're on today, or you know, fishing the bank like a dirtier water lake, I want something that's maybe not main lake, but main creek, you know, a lot of water, so you can pick up some wind and things like that. It just, in most cases, of course, there's exceptions to every rule. The further you get back in these creeks and stuff, just the more stagnant the water gets. And so I kind of want to say, depending on the water color around the mouths of these creeks and ditches and even on the main river, if you get good enough water. But you know, if you go fishing a lot in the summertime and you fish in the bank and stuff like this, you'll figure out there's just days where they bite real good, and there's days where they may not as good. There's always a way to catch some, but you know, I love fishing offshore, but there's just some days I just want to go throw at something. And that's, you know, the reason we came down here today, just wanting to throw at stumps and logs and throw a frog and not have to fish offshore. So just concentrate your efforts in the kind of the open water areas. I think you'll be just fine. Come off there. Choked it. Got it. He didn't even blow up, and that's actually a good sign. That's a feeding bite, because he just sucked it up. It wasn't like a explosion reaction, just on that point. Gosh, I love it. Like, I mean, so shallow. You can see his mud trail coming out where he was. Choked it. Choked it. That's the new disco ball. I had to get dressed up all crazy for the commercial, but that's why I did it right there. That's a good one for this pond. You know, a lot of people talk, well, frog, you know, colors don't matter. It's either white, black. The back doesn't matter. It does. Because now it may not matter on a white, you know, belly or a solid black, but when you get into these perch and these translucent colors, they can see all the way through it. This is just like, you know, I imagine those little minnows and stuff. You know, I call them slick minnows. They're about that long, or even shad. It just has that that look. I mean, you can see through it. It's just like a little silhouette up there. So when you get around fish that, you know, or pressured, or just, I just think it gets you, the color gets you 2, 3, 4, 5 extra bites a day, just because of how they react on it. And those last two, like, they're not blowing up, and the reason, there's two reasons. One, I think they're actually feeding and not reacting, but the other, it is that deep. So they can't come up from the bottom. They got to come from the side, which I'd rather them eat it like they are today, just sucking it in. Just barely got it. I think I'm gonna have to let it set for a little bit. So what happens is there's, like, you know, there's little holes in them pads. My tendency is to fish it fast. Well, I come through that hole, I get their attention, and then I'm back up on top. I might have to let it set there, I think, for a little bit. So I've missed a couple. It's definitely a concentration. I mean, and they're back. I mean, you'd think they'd be on the edge. That wind hitting it. You know, fishing in the hot part of the summer, fishing the bank, you know, you got to kind of take what you get. You know, I kind of look at it as, if I get 12, 15 bites, that's not a terrible day. That's kind of what we had today. I mean, honestly, I didn't do a very good job of catching. Had, you know, a lot of bites that I didn't hook up with, but you know, it is what it is. Not everybody has access to lakes where they can fish offshore, and I still, like, in the summertime, I like to go and grind the bank some, and there's days that it's hot, that it's actually really good fishing. So, you know, I just, like I said, pick up the shad colors, the 10 full colors, and get them to react. What you'll figure out is the later in the summer that it gets where they really key on shad, that's when those colors will really shine, even though I fish them, you know, all throughout the summer. So thanks for riding along. We're gonna go find some AC.